Welcome back, brothers. Today's video is going to be a complete masterclass of the Bulwark in Space Marine 2. And as I break down the class, you're going to see almost exclusively Ruthless tier gameplay, with gameplay from, I think, one substantial clear sprinkled in as well, just because the gameplay in that one was applicable to some of the points that I make in the video. Also, the gameplay will be a mix of max level and low level Bulwark, so you can see how the Bulwark can be viable even when you're leveling it up. With the disclaimers out of the way, let's dive right into the class, starting with a brief summary of what the class is designed to do well. So the Bulwark is the ultimate area denial class in Space Marine 2. They can plant their metaphorical or even their literal flag in the ground and say, "You're not moving me from this spot." They're all about claiming a position and fending off the hordes of enemies that might dare to take it from you. In fact, when I'm dialed in with the Bulwark, I often find myself advancing to a strategic location and just saying, "Mine." And they have all the necessary tools in their belt to make sure that no one moves them until they decide to be moved. Because of this, while I often like getting to the end of a Ruthless clear and seeing how little damage I can take, with the Bulwark, it's kind of the opposite. Like, I laugh when we clear a tough operation and I don't go down once, but at the end, it shows that I took over 500 damage. Like, you're a proper tank. But it's the tools you use to hold your ground and the mastery over those tools that I really want to focus on in this video. So we'll talk perks in the perk tree, we'll talk weapon choices, and specific skills and maneuvers. So let's get into it. First up, the foundation of a good Bulwark is their ability to manage large waves of minorous enemies. We'll get to majors later, but a good Bulwark doesn't really need to run away from a horde of enemies. They may have to reposition and keep everything in front of them, sure, but they don't need to turn their backs and run away from a fight very often. In order to manage these waves, you need a weapon that can do wide swings, cleave a bunch of minorous enemies at once, and queue up gun strikes for armor and regain contested health to stay in the fight longer. There are several parts of the kit that accomplish that job. The first is the energy sword. So after playing with the power fist and the chain sword, it became clear to me pretty quickly that the energy sword was the play. It has two modes that you can swap between on the fly. There's the heavy stance for slow and big swings that hit lots of enemies, or there's the speed stance for targeted faster damage on a single opponent. I think I'm going to follow up this video with a complete guide on how to master the energy sword because there's actually so much going on with this weapon. I think it deserves its own video. But in this video, let me just tell you the winning combination that I landed on after a lot of experimentation. So parrying is a big part of the Bulwark kit. And that being said, I got to the point where I feel comfortable consistently parrying with a balanced frame instead of a fencing frame. So I end up picking the Imperator blade because of its perfect balance between strength, speed, and cleaving potential. The fencing energy sword does swing faster and gives you bigger parry windows, right? But the offset is that it hits, half as many enemies in front and around you. That's the trade-off that I wasn't okay with. So since I'm often going to be leaning into this 360-degree melee combat flow, I want to hit as many targets as possible in a single swing. My parry windows aren't as massive as they are with the fencing sword, but I've played the game enough to get the timing down on most of these attacks, so I'm okay with the trade-off here. Let's talk about the perk tree on the sword, because there's so much the sword is doing for you in the background. It's crazy. I went straight bottom row, and I love it. First, we have Master of Defense. This perk makes it so that you take 20% less ranged damage for 5 seconds after switching your stance on the blade. This is massive. A lot of times we're going to be running down enemies with the shield pulled up, but then we lower our shield to attack, and you're going to take a couple of hits in that animation. So what I do is change the stance just before I lower the shield, or another thing you can do is actually dodge forward towards the target and then hold the melee attack button. And this will launch you into the opening a heavy attack of the opposite stance, right? So if I'm in light stance and I dodge forward and I hold the attack button, I'll then go straight into the heavy stance horizontal attack instead of the leaping poke light attack. The second I do that, I get 20% less incoming range damage, which is great. So try to swap your stance often to get more uptime on that buff. Next, we have Tranquility. When you're surrounded and using those heavy stance cleaving attacks, you can't be knocked back. You can stand your ground and just swing away, earning back contested health the moment you lose it, and queuing up gun strikes for armor charges. Slashing Blade then adds another attack into our heavy combo so we can chain attacks for longer. Just so you know, there's a little bit of a bug right now with the Bulwark where if you're holding forward, whether it's the W key or forward on your thumbstick, it's going to just continue to do the first move in the combo over and over and over again. But if you don't hold forward, you'll actually progress through the entire combo. Extremist Slayer ups our damage output against bosses. Power Restoration is going to double the amount of contested health that you earn back with Power Stance, which is massive here, by the way. And then finally, Minoris Slayer, which gives us an extra 20% damage to Minoris level enemies. Now you put all that together, and you're now like immovably cleaving down waves of adds faster, gaining more health for it, and you have more attacks in your combo to do it even longer. Every chaos operation in the background is on Ruthless, and with this setup, we're going to be able to hold our ground against the waves of shield-bearing Zangors, knocking them away and executing them with gun strikes. Now let's talk more in depth about area denial. The huge cleaving potential of the Bulwark that we just talked about is the foundation of area denial. But our perk tree also has several perks that play into this as well. And unlike some of the other classes in the game, like Tactical and Assault, the Bulwark actually gains access to many of these key area denial perks early in the leveling process. In fact, by level 13, you'll have almost every piece of the kit ready to go. So first up is the perk Defensive Advantage. A perfect parry basically puts a shock grenade at your feet once every 30 seconds. This shock area of effect does not hurt you like a shock grenade would though, so you can stand right in the middle of it and lure more enemies into it. If you're playing on minimal or average difficulties, you may want to start with a lower level fencing version of the energy sword just to get used to focusing on the timing of all the parry attacks in the game and queuing up this shock effect. Then you can switch to a balanced frame after you're more comfortable. Defensive Advantage is going to dramatically increase our area denial. And these don't have to be attacks from like Majoris enemies either. You can perfect parry any regular melee attack from any source and queue up this shock area. The next perk we want to select is Purity of Purpose. Your banner will do damage over time to anything within its radius. So not only will it be healing you, but it will be whittling down the enemies that come into the territory that you just claimed for yourself. This damage over time adds up quickly, and many Majoris level enemies go from full health to executable in seconds while I stand and block their incoming attacks. And you can even perfect parry an attack while you're in this banner area and stack your Defensive Advantage shock AoE on top of your banner AoE for extra damage over time. It's nasty. Next up, Emergency Countermeasure. Once every 2 minutes, when your armor gets depleted, you spawn a shock grenade at your feet. So are you seeing what's going on here? We now have 3 different ways to spawn shock grenades and area of effect damage right at our feet. That's a lot of shock damage with a lot of uptime. And then you sprinkle in the fact that we've got this god tier cleaving weapon that's juiced beyond belief with our perk selection for heavy sweeping attacks as well. This is area denial on steroids, brothers. And we're just getting started. Let's add in another variable. The next perk on our Bulwark tree is going to be Intimidating Aura. Whenever you perfect parry, you'll do AoE damage in a 5-meter radius all around you. Perfect parry the attack coming from in front of you, simultaneously kill the 4 Minoris enemies behind you that are chewing on your butt cheeks. Not to mention you likely just created a shock AoE at your feet with that parry as well. It's all coming together now. We are absolutely full sending on this area denial fantasy with the Bulwark, but let's take it further. The next perk is Shock and Awe. Enemies in our shock area of effects now take an additional 25% damage. And guys, it took me a minute to understand this perk. It's so much better than you might think at first glance. Notice it doesn't say they take 25% more shock damage. They just take 25% more damage. This is a debuff that applies to all incoming damage, including the shock damage at their feet. But your melees will do 25% more damage to them. Your teammate's sniper shot will do 25% more damage to them. Your crack grenades will do 25% more damage to that hellbrute that's caught in your electricity. This is absolutely massive, y'all. If you start communicating to your teammates to shoot the stuff in your shock areas, they're going to be eaten pretty good. Next up is the team perk Advanced Conditioning. Contested health fades 50% more slowly for all squad members. So this synergizes perfectly with the perk on the energy sword that we selected that gives us double contested health refunded with heavy stance attacks. So our health fades in half the time, but with double the gains. You can see that working together in the gameplay here. The goal is to be able to take a real beating while battling for all that health back in real time. Think of it like treading water. Gravity's trying to pull you under, but you're just kicking your feet steadily to keep your head above the water. Next up is Focused Strength. Shield Bash knocks enemies back and makes them lose control for a longer period of time. The Shield Bash is super underrated and underutilized in this game. I rely heavily on Shield Bash when fighting against Chaos Magers. They have a tendency to teleport on you, but if you Shield Bash them with Focused Strength applied, it gives you a massive damage window to really lay into them, and you can essentially stun lock them by going for a second Shield Bash after a couple of attacks. If you're not familiar with the Shield Bash, all you have to do is hold your parry button to bring up your shield, and then hit the light melee attack command to shove the enemy in front of you with your shield. It's a great way to get enemies off of you for a moment, let you gather yourself, or tee up a nice volley of attacks. One excellent combo is to wait and bait out an attack from a major or extremist enemy, parry the attack to put the shock effect at their feet, and then immediately Shield Bash them to stun them so they just stand there taking a bunch of damage in the shock area. We touch more on shield usage in a moment. But first, let's finish our perk selections. Next up is Inspiration, the last perk we're going to be using in our area denial build. All squad members within the banner's area of effect deal 10% more damage. It's the last piece of the puzzle. Our banner is doing damage over time to enemies inside its area. We're healing inside the area. We are doing extra damage inside the area. It's the ultimate area denial build. Best in the game for this specific task. And now that you've seen all the perks and know why we're running them, let's sprinkle in a couple more variables, starting with the shield itself. As we just noted, the shield has a Shield Bash attack, which stuns enemies and gives you some space to maneuver, but it also has more functionality. The shield will block all ranged damage. Note that that doesn't apply to melee damage. You can't just turtle up. Also note that this won't block orange attacks that indicate you need to dodge, but it will block sniper shots. It'll block the little gaunts with guns that suck. They get shut down by the shield and more. So hold the parry button anytime you want to just say no thank you to incoming ranged damage. The shield will go up when you begin sprinting as well, but other commands will lower it, so be sure to hold the parry button to re-engage the shield when needed. One of the best things a Bulwark can do is charge down an enemy who has a ranged attack and take all their aggro, thereby protecting their squad mates from such attacks. Now let's talk about your sidearm. You can use the bolt pistol or the plasma pistol here. Personally, I prefer the plasma pistol just generally, just because the charged shot has some great applications. It can immediately disrupt enemies who are calling for aid. It also helps us be contributors against neurothropes and zoanthropes and sorcerers. Sometimes you need to dish out some solid ranged damage. Take, for example, the Helldrake final encounter. The plasma pistol is going to give us that extra oomph that we need in such instances. But there's also a place for the standard bolt pistol. I like the bolt pistol in general, but if you have a really good sniper on your team, I think the bolt pistol might be the play. A good sniper is going to absolutely slay against neurothropes and zoanthropes, and they'll easily disrupt enemy calls for backups. But they also have a team passive that helps you cool down your class ability much faster with every headshot kill you get. So if you're a Bulwark with a good sniper on your team, you may actually want to run the bolt pistol and pop a bunch of gaunt heads left and right and get that banner up lightning fast, because getting those headshot kills with the plasma pistol is a lot less easy to do, since the projectile has a lot more travel time. And the next thing on the list that we need to chat about is when to put down the banner. There's some power of choice here. Just note that the banner will immediately give you full contested health, meaning that if you put the banner down and then do a finisher, you'll go straight to max health. Now that is, I think, a little bit of a bug right now, because there is a perk in the perk tree that says it's supposed to do that, and if you equip that perk, it actually does not apply that effect. It does the opposite. It takes the effect away. So that's why we're not running it in our perk tree. I think that might get fixed eventually, but for now, this is what you want to do. Your teammates might actually request a banner if they're at low health. Then you can put the banner down when enemies are approaching, give your teammate that full white bar, and let them get a kill to fill it to maximum. And remember, that contested health bar, it's depleting half as fast as normal too with this build, so they've got some extra time to make some big gains to that health bar. But the banner animation can also get you killed because it's not immediate. I have had it before when I'm completely surrounded by majors. So I try to put that banner down and I literally die because 3 or 4 majors all hit me during that animation. So you want to give yourself some room first, like with a shield bash or a finisher that pushes everyone away for a moment before you plant that flag. So bear that in mind. Okay, so here we are at the wrap up of the video, and the main thing that I want you to take away is that if you play the Bulwark correctly, then you are an immovable object and the floor is lava. Well, the floor is lightning. So for the end of the video, I'll go ahead and I'll just show you some complete uninterrupted engagements here, where you can see everything sort of working together and just see how top shelf the Bulwark can be. And let me give you a big thank you to all of you offering some wild support via Patreon and helping us build up a great brotherhood of Astartes who are literally like constantly gaming together and grinding this game. It's amazing. And I've had a blast getting to know the now over 50 of you who have joined our Discord community. I'm in there almost every day as well, dropping invite codes for folks to hop into my games. I hop into some other folks' games. We grind together. If that sounds appealing to you, feel free to follow the link in the pinned comment and the description that takes you to the Patreon page, and make sure that you click on the $3 tier, as that's the gaming one and will sync up with your Discord account when you connect the two and give access to the Space Marine Discord rooms. If you have trouble getting that to work, just DM me there on Patreon and we'll get you set. Thanks so much for all the amazing support on the channel as we continue the Space Marine coverage. Be warm and well fed, my friends. Courage and honor.